October 2024, my wife and I went on board the Marella Voyager and did the Mediterranean Medley Itinerary, visiting Italy, France and Spain. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you all the places that we visited on this itinerary. If you're interested in going on the cruise yourself, you can see all the different ports, or if you're just interested in seeing my photographs and video, then sit back and enjoy the journey. Our first port of call was Florence in Italy. Now we actually docked in Livorno, but we got the train to Florence. We really wanted to go there because of this beautiful architecture. Now this is the Basilica of St. Mary, Santa Maria. In front of the church is a very lively square and it's surrounded by very interesting architecture. And then we set off along a short walk towards the Cathedral of Santa Maria. Now here you can see on the right the baptistry of St. John in front, but behind is the main cathedral itself. Now this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was completed in 1436. In the 15th century, it was the largest church in Western Europe, and the dome is still the largest dome constructed of bricks anywhere in the world. And it's just a stunning piece of architecture with its black and white patterns over the front. An absolutely breathtaking building to go and view. Then we come to the Piazza della Santissima Annunziata. Now I've perhaps butchered the pronunciation of that. There's a statue of Ferdinando on horseback and also the fountains of the Mostri monsters. And of course we had to stop to have a photograph in front of this really unusual fountain. From there we carried on wandering through the city and we came across the Basilica of the Holy Cross. Now this is the largest Franciscan church in the world. It was completed in 1385 and it's also the burial place of Michelangelo, Galileo and Machiavelli. The River Arno flows through the centre of Florence and it does create some really attractive views, and you can see the buildings alongside the riverbank are really attractive as well. During World War II, only one of the bridges was spared, and this is the Ponte Vecchio, which in Italian stands for the Old Bridge, but it's quite distinctive with its old style because it's got houses and shops built along the top. This was close to vehicular traffic in the early 1900s, but you can still walk across it and visit the many shops along its length. After a short walk along the river, we came across the Column of Justice. Now this granite column is 11 metres long and weighs 50 tonnes. It was originally installed in the Baths of Caracalla in Rome, and it took months to transport to Florence, travelling at about 100 metres per day. The column was erected in 1565 and the Statue of Justice was added in 1580 after taking 11 years to complete. It was then back to the cruise ship to move on to France. Our next port of call was Villefranche, which is a picturesque resort town on the French Riviera. Now because it's such a small port, we had to catch a tender because the cruise ship couldn't dock there. And our main goal here was to get to shore to catch the train to Monaco, but the town itself is very picturesque. It was built between 1550 and 1561 as a key part of the coastline's defence system. You can explore the old town and it has a very medieval atmosphere. The yacht harbour was once a naval port and the historic docks are still used today. After a short but very crowded train ride, we arrived at Monaco. Now our first stop was to try and get to the Grand Prix track because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to walk around the historic track, but it was interesting along the way to see the opulence. And when we arrived at the casino, and I was a little bit baffled because I have watched the Grand Prix and I've driven it on the PlayStation as well, and I couldn't really see many signs of the Grand Prix track other than occasionally some red and white curbstones. And I knew that the Grand Prix track came through Casino Square, but I just couldn't quite visualize it. The building itself was really very opulent, but I was really struggling to try and identify where the Grand Prix track would run. I did realise that most of the fixtures were temporary, but they could be taken up and moved to accommodate the Formula One cars coming through this area. After stopping for a quick photograph in front of the casino, we set off down the hill towards Mirabeau, which is the corner before the very famous Fairmont hairpin in front of the Grand Hotel. And it's an iconic place, and when I posted this on social media, everybody knew where I was. It's one of those really well-known places in the world that is instantly recognisable. And then we entered the tunnel. That is another iconic part of the Grand Prix track before coming out alongside the yacht club and the marina. This stretch of road leads down to the Nouvelle Chicane and to Bac, which is in the distance, but I was really surprised by just how close the track runs to the water and these super yachts, only separated by what must be a slightly more beefed up fencing during the Grand Prix. You can see here the swimming pool complex, and as I zoom out you can see the pit straight that is occupied by fairground rides, La Rascasse corner, and then as I pan around we look down the finishing straight. Of course we had to visit the Old Town, which overlooks a marina and is dominated by the Prince's Palace, which is home to Prince Albert II. As well as being a tourist attraction, it's a fully working palace and headquarters of the Monegasque ruler, hence the sentries that are on constant guard duty. It was built in 1191 as a Genoese fortress, and it's a blend of architectural styles. Its ancient origins are indicated by its lack of symmetry, with the principal facade having a Renaissance style. The Old Town is a maze of cobble streets lined by really interesting shops. You'll also find the Cathedral of Monaco that was completed in 1903 and consecrated on the 11th of June in 1911. And then as we walked back down the hill towards the marina again, we came across Saint-Devote, which gives its name to the first corner on the Grand Prix circuit before we headed back up to the train station. Our second port of call in France was Toulon, and this is a large port on the Mediterranean coast, important for naval construction, fishing, winemaking and the manufacture of aeronautical equipment, armaments, maps, paper, tobacco, printing, shoes and electronic equipment. The Old Town of Toulon is a historic centre between the port and the boulevard of Strasbourg and the Cours de Lafayette. There's a pedestrian area with narrow streets, small squares and many fountains. The area is also the home of the celebrated provincial market, which takes place every morning on the Cours de Lafayette and features local products. Toulon features prominently in Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. It is the home of the infamous prison in which a protagonist, Jean Valjean, spends 19 years in hard labour. Toulon is also the birthplace of the novel's antagonist, Javert. One portion of the wall of the old prison where Jean Valjean was supposedly held still stands to the right of the entrance of the old harbour. Hidden away in the streets of Old Toulon is a gigantic boat sculpture installed in an unusual way against a building. This immense boat sculpture has been anchored here since 1995 and it's emblematic of the city's maritime past. At the time of its construction, the boat sculpture was part of a rehabilitation where the town saw some regeneration because it had started to fall into decay. When we last visited Toulon about 5 years ago, the boat had a much more naturalistic paint scheme. It's now been painted in a very colourful style, and I'm not sure that it's an improvement. It's common to see people in France out in the open playing boules. Now, boules is a game often played in open spaces in town squares and parks and in villages and towns. Dedicated playing areas for boules type games are typically large, level, rectangular courts made of flattened earth, gravel or crushed stones, and to win, a team must reach 15 points. As a photographer, I couldn't resist taking some photographs of the locals, so here are some photographs that I took as we were wandering around. Our cruise next took us to Spain and the port of Barcelona. As we got off the boat, the first thing that we noticed was the Columbus Monument, which is a 60-metre tall monument to Christopher Columbus at the end of La Rambla. It was constructed for the Universal Exhibition of Barcelona in 1888 in honour of Columbus's first voyage to the Americas. In 1992, a new Olympic marina was taking shape. Frank Gehry placed his fish sculpture facing the ocean. The animal is 56 metres long and 35 metres high, and it seems to be longing to jump into the blue waters of the Mediterranean. We then jumped on an open-top red bus to tour the city, and this was heading for the Sagrada Familia, which is a church under construction. It's the largest unfinished Catholic church in the world. It was designed by Catalan architect Antoni Gaudi. On the 19th of March 1882, construction of the Sagrada Familia began under the architect Francisco de Paulo del Villar, and in 1883, when Villar resigned, Gaudi took over as chief architect, transforming the project with his architectural and engineering style, combining Gothic and Art Nouveau forms. At the time of his death in 1926, less than a quarter of the project was complete, and the building is forecast to be complete in 2026. The Gothic Quarter in Barcelona is full of beautiful architectural buildings and is the home of Barcelona Cathedral, which is the Cathedral of the Holy Cross and Saint Eulalia, and it's the seat of the Archbishop of Barcelona in Catalonia. The Gothic Quarter is a historic centre of the old city of Barcelona. The quarter encompasses the oldest parts of the city of Barcelona and includes the remains of the city's Roman wall and several notable medieval landmarks. Much of the present-day fabric of the quarter, however, dates to the 19th and early 20th century. The area retains a labyrinthine street plan with many small streets opening out into squares. Despite its name, a number of landmark Gothic buildings in the neighbourhood don't date to the Middle Ages. Rather, in the late 19th and 20th century, the quarter was completely transformed from a sombre neighbourhood to a tourist attraction through a massive restoration project, timed to be completed for the 1929 International Exhibition. The flamboyant style bridge that crosses the Cara Bisbee was newly constructed in 1928 by Joan Rubio with neo-Gothic additions. The Royal Square is close to La Rambla and is a popular tourist attraction, especially at night. The plaza hosts many restaurants and some of the city's most famous nightclubs. It's a popular meeting place in the summer and during other celebrations such as New Year's Eve. And the square's lampposts were designed by the Catalan architect Antoni Gaudi. Following a short walk down La Rambla, which is a very busy, marketed street in Barcelona, we arrived back at the waterfront and were treated to a view of some parakeets and some trees, and so I got some video of those and some photographs. The final stop of our cruise was Alicante. We'd really enjoyed our time on board the ship, and it's always nice to get off and see new places. And we were really pleasantly surprised by Alicante. We didn't know quite what to expect, but the architecture was really stunning. It was overlooked by the Santa Barbara Castle, which stands on top of Mount Benacantil. This is 166 metres tall, which gave it an enormous strategic value, since from it you can see the entire bay of Alicante and its land surroundings. Construction of the St. Nicholas Cathedral began in the year 1600, replacing a building that had stood there previously. It is built in the Agrarian Renaissance style and it's located in the heart of the city of Alicante. Its floor plan is in the shape of a Latin cross with an interior that boasts notable features such as the 15th century cloister with 2 Baroque doors, an altar and the blue cupola, which is 45 metres high. Below the cupola is a communion chapel, which is considered to be one of the most beautiful examples of Spanish Baroque. Nestled in the heart of Alicante is a statue which is a tribute to the esteemed politician José Canalejas. La Esplanada de España is one of the city's emblems. It runs parallel to one of the port wharfs and is lined on both sides with rows of palm trees. The floor is decorated with 6,600,000 tricoloured marble tiles, forming a design with a characteristic wave effect mosaic. During the summer season, it houses the the Alicante Craft Fair, where you can buy typical products such as sweets and nugget, leather crafts, glass, clothing and everything else that you can imagine. On the Esplanade you'll find the emblematic building known as the Casa Carbonell, and also the open air auditorium known as La Concha, which hosts numerous concerts and cultural events throughout the year. As always, we really enjoyed our cruise, and this was a really great itinerary, visiting 3 different countries, 5 different ports, all very varied and really interesting, and we can't wait to book our 6th cruise. Now if you'd like to see more of the Marella Voyager, click on my ship tour in the left hand corner, and if you really like my videos, then you can click on my face in the bottom left hand corner to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.